It used to be the saying said that when the U.S. caught a cold economically, Latin America would catch pneumonia. That no longer seems to be the case. It seems like, does that have to be maybe because of diversification away from our economy or more globalization?
Certainly that was a kind of metaphor that would have been used in the 80s. It's the catch cold pneumonia metaphor. And as I kind of try to characterize in my remarks, the resiliency that we saw across much of Latin America during the recession here and the financial crisis here suggests that that kind of medical connection doesn't exist any longer, not at that degree at least. In an integrated world, everyone gets affected by what happens somewhere else. What's going on in Europe has effect on confidence levels here in the United States. As I suggested in my remarks, demand levels in the United States and other advanced countries, areas, particularly Europe, have an effect on commodity prices, and commodity prices then influence the state of growth in Latin American countries. So everyone is influenced. I think a couple things can be pointed to as reasons that a Brazil, for example, just seems far more resilient than it did 3 decades ago. The economy has matured. It is a rather well-balanced economy today. Brazil has discovered offshore oil. Petrobras is in the process of developing those oil fields, but they're moving in the direction of much less dependence on the outside world for energy. Brazil has an impressive energy picture built on hydropower. All those marvelous rivers create an electrical basis of hydropower, which is very strong. They also are a leader in ethanol, sugar coming from sugarcane bagasse and other inputs. Brazil is an industrial country with an auto industry, often foreign brands, but an auto industry that then exports their autos elsewhere. So diversification, good energy policy for the country makes them somewhat less dependent on the rest of the world. But I would emphasize what I emphasized in the speech. Good fiscal policy and sound monetary policy really is the foundation. And most of the countries of Latin America have followed that path. They learned big lessons in the 80s and basically reoriented their policy set, and that has really proved to be, I think, a quite successful approach. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for all the information. One thing saddens me. You have not mentioned Colombia for anything, and I was hoping you just make me feel good and give us a little bit about Colombia.
I will now mention Colombia. You should know, I was sitting with my colleague Stephen Kay this morning at 8 o'clock, just before coming here, and I said, we did not mention Colombia in the speech. Stephen pointed out if I went to number 5 in terms of commodity exports, then I would have listed Colombia. But I have nothing but good things to say about the trajectory of Colombia over the last 2 decades. The domestic problems, insurgency and so forth, seem to have been handled and stabilized. It's an economy of scale, over 40 million people. We've signed a trade agreement with Colombia here in the United States. Again, the economic management has been very sound, and the Colombian economy is doing extremely well. I get anecdotal feedback from Colombians and other people who travel there, and the overall tone of what I hear is the Colombian economy is doing extremely well. Again, it's been, from an economic point of view and a political point of view, a rather well-managed country for quite some time. President Uribe just has to be a hero in the way he managed some of the internal problems and also guided the economy. How about one last question? Alejandro. Presidency has its prerogatives.
Just to follow up. Thank you. Just to follow up on that question, you mentioned NAFTA. It's old news, and it's obvious that it's been very successful, and it's been implemented for many years now. A lot of people don't even think about NAFTA anymore. But when it was passed, there was a lot of controversy, as it was when this trade agreement with Colombia and Korea were finally passed and approved. But NAFTA has been a success for you, for the most part. A lot of integration has happened within several industries, the automotive industry being a very good example of that, between not only Mexico and the US, but also Canada, the whole region. Do you see a possibility to have that same level of integration in some industries with Colombia? Or is the relationship of a different nature than it was with Mexico?
Well, again, I'm going to speak very generally without a lot of analysis to back up my impressions to give you an answer to your question. But I think you have to look at Mexico and its proximity to the United States as a bordering country as, to some extent, in a different category than all other countries. That is not to exclude the possibility of industrial integration. And there are clearly industries in which a lot of integration has already occurred in other countries in Latin America. But I think our partnership with Mexico is just so strong because of the common border and because much of the industrial base of Mexico is in the northern states. So looked at from an economic point of view, it's just more of an entity today with products in various stages of the production cycle moving from the United States to Mexico to add value, back to the United States, back to Mexico, then back to the United States, with ultimate assembly being done in one country or another. In order to have that kind of highly refined supply chain, it really helps to have a common border and to be able to move product back and forth. I think that's very encouraging. We have to think of the economy as a North American economy, just as we think of our Canadian partners. That border in Ontario that moves auto parts back and forth is just essential to the auto, at least to the auto industry in Michigan, and that kind of integration requires real ease of movement of product back and forth. So I think Mexico's in a little bit different place than Colombia or any of the other Latin American countries.